All right, so there I was on the side of a mountain somewhere between 15 and 16,000 feet during the winter with no sleeping bag, headlamp completely dead, standing on the edge of a cliff, and it's getting dark. Not a good situation to be in. So how did I end up here? Well, it was a long series of events. Grab your popcorn. It started off in Austin, Texas, where I worked at a place called Whole Earth Provision Company, and I sold climbing gear. I had gotten pretty serious into the whole sport climbing, rock climbing thing in the Austin early to mid 90s. Pretty thriving scene here then, thriving scene here now. But it was sort of the cutting edge at the time, and I worked at the gear shop, so I got to go on a lot of cool trips. You know, part of my job was to go climbing, and one of the real exciting, close and easy to get to destinations was climbing the volcanoes in Mexico. So outside of Mexico City, there are 3 volcanoes. They are the 3rd, 5th, and 7th highest peaks in North America, you know, over 18,000 feet. One of them exploded not too long ago. And a lot of people from Texas, especially because you could fly to Mexico City, take a bus, whatever, be there really quickly, get on the mountain in no time, and do an 18,000 foot plus peak. So that's where we were. Now, most of the people in this story, besides myself and maybe one other person, we're going to not name them because, you know, maybe not the most flattering tale. Now, I'm going to admit that I was at fault as well, and that's why I haven't been able to feel my toes for 30 plus years. So anyway, yeah, we decided to go and climb one of the volcanoes, Popo, the tallest one, so 18,000 plus feet. And the thing about this trip is we took a bus to the border. We took my car to the border, dropped my car off, hopped on a first class bus, and went straight to Mexico City. At the time, you could get a taxi, 4-wheel drive taxi, and get really close. I mean, I think actually you could go from sea level to, you know, over 14,000 feet, which is where the base camp, the climber's hut was. You could go from sea level to over 14,000 feet in less than 24 hours. But I knew that that was not a good idea, and I told my climbing partner what we need to do is we need to go to Mexico City, we need to get on the bus, and we go to the nearest town to the base of the volcano, and then we're going to hike up. It's going to take us a couple of days to get there. But, you know, we're acclimating the whole time, so we're hiking up, and it's going to take us longer to get there, but our chances of summiting are going to be much better the more time we spend acclimating. At least that's what I thought. So we do that, and we get to base camp, the hut at 14,000 feet, and we're just kind of hanging out there. So the plan is, you know, go up, climb up during the day, get up higher, closer to the peak, acclimate a little bit more, come down, and then, you know, maybe 2, 3, maybe 4 days later, we go for the summit once we're fully acclimated to the elevation. But what happened was this shop that we worked at, Whole Earth Provision Company, there's multiple locations in Texas, and there was a group of guys from the Houston store who came up. I don't remember their names, so don't have to worry about embarrassing them. But they took the 4-wheel drive taxi, so they basically came from Houston at sea level to 14,000 feet in like, you know, a day. And not a good idea usually. And sure enough, one of the 2 guys woke up in the middle of the night. He's got this splitting headache. I can't remember, but he kept repeating the same thing over and over again. Several people started asking him, you know, like, hey, man, do you know where you are? Do you know what your name is? And he did not. So what was happening was that he was, we think, was having cerebral edema, which, you know, is like swelling of the brain, and was not going to be in good shape if he did not get to lower elevation ASAP. Well, fortunately, the four-wheel taxi driver had decided to spend the night there. He'd gotten there kind of late. So he was able to take this guy and take him back to town. And glad to say he made a 100% recovery. He's fine. But now his climbing partner doesn't have a climbing partner. And, we went up in groups of two, basically. So I have a climbing partner, and there's this other guy that we kind of know because we work for the same company. He doesn't have a climbing partner. He's feeling pretty good. So he's like, hey, can I climb with you guys? And I'm like, yeah, that's great, because 3 people on a rope is actually a pretty good idea. 1 person up front, 1 person in the back, 1 person in the middle. You got 3 axes, 3 chances. If you fall, there's 2 people with an axe that hopefully can stop the fall and keep you from falling off the mountain. So we decide to team up. And the 3 of us, there's actually a small little shack off to the side of the main climber's hut. So we go and stay there. Now, I'm got this plan that's going to take us forever to get up the mountain because we're going to do all these acclimation days. But our buddy from Houston, he's got a limited amount of time. So he's got to get up the mountain and get back down. Well, my partner decided that he really wants to go to the beach. So he's like, let's go for it. Let's just get up there. Let's just climb it. And I'm like, oh man, I don't really think that's a great idea, but it's 2 against 1. I was in really good shape at the time, had been working out for this climb specifically and just, other climbs in general. I was a runner, I could run 10 miles without stopping. I was in great shape. So I'm like, if they can do it, I can do it. So let's go for it. So we get up, and what you have to do is you have to start this climb super early in the morning. And that way you get up to the peak, to the summit, and back down before you run out of daylight, before the ice starts getting mushy because of the sunlight and everything. So you start off, I can't remember exactly, but we started off somewhere between midnight and 2 a.m. And so we start climbing. And it becomes really obvious really quickly that my 2 climbing partners are pushing the pace a lot faster than I wanted to, maybe just faster than I could. And the thing was we realized, we'd talked to some folks earlier, that the ice was actually really hard, and it didn't really make a lot of sense for us to all be on the same rope together because it was just really hard. If one person fell, more than likely what was going to happen if you were all roped up is you were just going to yank the other 2 guys off the mountain with you as you slid down the glacier to your death or to your, painful stop. So basically we were the 3 of us solo climbing the mountain with just our crampons and our ice axes. So my partners take off. They're moving really fast. And I'm like, at one point, they're like, hey, man, you okay? And I'm like, you know what? I'm actually really good, but I can't keep up with you guys. So I'm just going to keep on at my pace. If you guys summit on the way down, grab me. I'll call it a day, go back down. Let's just be safe here. So they're like, cool. So I see the 2 of them. They're just going. They're going. And they're just getting smaller and smaller and smaller as they go up, and we're on the ice, so I can see them. They're two black dots on the ice, just getting smaller, smaller, smaller. And then all of a sudden I notice it's like, man, they're getting bigger. They're like coming down. But I never lost sight of them completely, and you can't see the summit from where we are. There's a couple of false summits or some ridges or something. And so I'm like, well, man, I guess they summited without me, and I'm going to go back, And they both get back to where I am, and they're like, dude, we're toast. We can't make it. My head's about to explode. Both of them are just like toast. And I made a bad decision at this point. And I decided, you know what? I've been climbing solo this whole time anyway, so I'm going to continue on. So I tell the other 2 guys, I was like, hey, I'm going to go for the summit. would you please just wait for me at the bottom of the glacier? And they're like, yeah, cool. We'll be there. So I continue climbing. I'm actually feeling really good at this point. I'm taking my pace, which is, my pace. And I'm like, I can do this for days without stopping. The altitude slowed me down some, but I'm doing pretty good. So I start getting really near the summit. I mean, I can smell sulfur coming out of the volcano, out of the crater. And I'm like, I'm so close, but I was a little bit disoriented, and the ice was super, super steep. And like I said earlier, the ice was super hard. I mean, this was like mostly ice, not a lot of snow. And so I'm well above like 17,000 feet by myself. I look down the glacier. It's a pretty good ways down there, and I don't see anything. I don't see my climbing partner. But I'm assuming that they're down there waiting for me. Sure, they're cold, but they're sitting down, relaxing. They got food, they got water. So I make the decision, a good decision at this point, to turn back. I'm like, this is getting crazy. It's crazy to even try this in the first place, and it's just insane to continue on. So I start back down the glacier. I get to, where I'm starting to see some clear rock, and, where the trail back to the hut is, and I don't see my climbing partner or the other guy anywhere, I'm like, whatever. They're somewhere down there. And I get to the base of the ice, and I sit down, I'm taking my crampons. And then my buddy Keith Guillory, who also worked at the Whole Earth store in Houston, he comes walking up, and he's like, hey, man, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, Keith, I'm fine, dude. And he's like, are you sure? And he asked me, like, what's your name? Where are you? What day is today? And all that, just kind of checking to make sure I'm really there. And I'm like, yeah, dude. And he's like, dude, I saw your partners show back up at camp without you. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Thing was, Keith had been on like this summer-long climbing expedition the previous summer, and he'd actually been a part of it, at least one, maybe two climbing accident recovery missions, within the year. And he was like, dude, I did not want to go on another recovery mission to find somebody that I knew. So he was like, I'm here to check on you, make sure you're okay. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I'm fine. And actually I was, I felt great. So Keith's like, it's getting cold, it's getting dark. I just ran up here in this light jacket. I'm going to head back down. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm right behind you. So I was like, cool. So Keith takes off, he goes over a couple ridges and he's gone. So I start walking, and I'm on the trail. There's a lot of traffic on this mountain. There's a bunch of different trails. And somewhere I got off the trail, or I got on the wrong trail. And, I'm like, all right, I stop for a little bit, kind of look around, not really recognizing where I'm at. Kind of keep going. I'm going downhill, so I'm okay. Starts to get dark, and I pull out my headlamp. And I actually had a spare battery from a headlamp that I'd put in the headlamp that night. Like I'd burned through one battery, I think, and I put another battery. There's like these old school big square batteries, Petzl headlamps. All the old climbers know exactly what I'm talking about. Turn the headlamp on, and it just goes dead. I'm like, oh my God. So I got no light. So I keep walking for a little ways, and gradually it gets darker and darker. And then finally it's just pitch black. And I'm walking, and I like kick this rock. And the rock doesn't hit anything. And like what sounds like a few seconds later, I hear the rock kind of way down there. And it's like pitch black at this point. And I'm standing on the edge of a cliff. One more step, I would have been toast for sure. So at that point, there's really nothing else I can do. I got to bivvy out right then and there. And I don't have a sleeping bag. We're going to climb up summit, get back down. So no sleeping bag. And, we're in Mexico. We're pretty far south, but it is the winter and I am on a glacier, right below a glacier. So it's cold. And I remember dumping everything out of my big pack, pulling my pack up around my waist and cinching it tight. And as I was shivering myself to sleep, I was like, okay, so, my fingers are all good. The tip of my nose is good. My lips, everything's good, but I really can't feel my toes. So as I'm shivering myself to sleep, I'm thinking, okay, well, if I lose my toes, probably not going to be able to run like I used to. Probably won't be able to rock climb because you kind of need toes to rock climb to stick in the cracks and stuff like that. So I was thinking, well, I'll get a mountain bike with toe clips and I'll just become a badass toeless mountain biker, which is what I was thinking as I was shivering myself to sleep. Now, several times throughout the night, I could actually hear my friends yelling for me. They're yelling, "Ow, man!" And I was at that point so weak that I just couldn't yell. I mean, I just couldn't make any noise loud enough for them to hear me. And it's like, I can't really tell where they are. The sound's echoing all over the place. And I slept. I actually slept the night. And the next morning I hear yelling again, and I'm like trying to yell, but finally, like I see somebody over there, like on a ridge, and I got this bright red backpack, and I take the backpack off and I start waving, and they're like, "Oh my God, dude!" They come over, they find me, my toes are all jacked up, I'm limping, we get on the 4-wheel drive taxi, get back to town, get on the bus, go back to Mexico City, and then we get on the big bus, go back to Laredo, go back to the border. Now, my climbing partner, the guy who left me on the mountain, he's, kind of like, "Oh, dude, sorry that happened to you." I'm like, "Yeah, man, if you'd have waited for me at the bottom of the glacier, I could have walked back with you, but, you kind of left me out there and, yeah, I made a bad decision, but, you kind of left me high and dry." So anyway, but whatever, I'm a grown man. I chose to get out there and do what I did. So, it ain't his fault. It's my fault. But then we get back to Laredo and we're crossing the border. We took the bus. My car's in Laredo. We're going to drive it back. We got, a couple of weeks worth of gear in our packs, and we get to the bridge and Border Patrol is checking us. We pull everything out of the packs. I'm standing there kind of hobbling around foot to foot because my toes are on fire. And my climbing partner, and at this time, I got to tell you, I was like a, young black dude. I probably had on like some fuzzy tights and some kind of crazy looking shirt and, short dreads like sticking out like I'd just been electrocuted. And but my climbing partner is like a pretty like straight, normal looking white dude with glasses. But for whatever reason, he decides to like pop off to the Border Patrol agent. He's like, "Hey, dude, you going to help us put that stuff back in the packs?" And he's like, "Why?" And he's like, you took it out." And I'm like, "Dude, don't pop off to the Border Patrol guy, like you got no rights right here. And this is like a, no right zone here in the border." And so, I'm kind of getting nervous, and the Border Patrol guy takes off, He comes back a couple minutes later, we're loading our gear up. We got tons of gear. He comes back a couple minutes later and he's got the dope dog with him. And my climbing partner decides that he's going to pet the dope dog, like call him over, whistle for the dope dog and pet him and everything. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, dude, like when the drug dog shows up, you ignore the drug dog and you hope that the drug dog ignores you. You don't try to pet the drug dog, right? So sure enough, the Border Patrol agent says, "Sir, you come with me," to my climbing partner. He points at me and he says, "Hey, you watch those packs." And I'm like, "No problem." So I load both of our packs and I'm just standing there, in the no man's land of the border, between Mexico and the United States. And my climbing partner is gone for a long time. He comes out maybe an hour later, snatches his pack and just hauls ass across the bridge to Laredo. I mean, I can't keep up with him. I'm limping, And it's not funny, but it's one of those kind of almost like instant karma moments, because when I did finally catch up to him, I'm like, "Bro, what happened?" And he's like, "Well, I went back into this giant warehouse and I hear somebody screaming, 'Take your shoes off.'" And he's like, I take my shoes off and some guy comes running out of nowhere and just like field goal kicks my shoes to the other side of this giant warehouse, and then it was on. And he got the full on body cavity search. And, I've never had that done to me before, but I got the impression that it was not pleasant. This was a long time ago. I was pretty pissed at him for a good while, but at this point I'm like, we're even now, I guess. So we drive back to Austin pretty much in silence, and I don't think we ever went climbing together again. Now, I did make one more attempt on that mountain a few years later and turned back because somebody else had an incident. And I was like, done, never going back. Anyway, so yeah, to this day, I still can't feel my toes. I had what they call frost nip. All my toenails turned black, fell off, but I still have my toes. My toenails grew back. I have to be careful now. Like if I stub my toe, I have to look down and make sure there's not blood gushing out of it because I can't feel it. But yeah, looking back now, I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I had that experience. Probably wouldn't do it again if I knew how it was going to turn out. But, you're young, you're having a good time, and who's worried about getting your toes froze off? All right, y'all. If you like that story, if you listened to this much of it, obviously you did. If you liked it, give the video a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. If you really want to help me out, I've got some channel memberships here. $10 a month. You buy me a beer a month, a 6-pack a month, $10 a month, and it will really, really help me out. Really appreciate it. All right, so if you want to hear about the time a dude smoking weed at a boat ramp saved me, check out that video right there.